he became the emperor, and I became the legitimate daughter of the general's manor. Life was supposed to be quite comfortable. The imperial kitchen was no different from my own backyard kitchen, and all the civil and military officials greeted me with warm smiles. Who would have thought that my fiancé would kneel in the golden throne hall, weeping with utmost sincerity, begging the emperor to allow him to demote me to a concubine. My brother leisurely finished the last half of his orange, then looked up at him. That look, I was all too familiar with it. In our past life, he had looked at the classmate sitting in front of me the exact same way. That guy stole my spicy gluten strips, and not long after, he transferred to another school. The chill from the floor tiles of the golden throne hall seeped straight into my feet, bored out of my mind. I cowered behind a pillar in the back row, chewing on the candied fruit hidden in my sleeve. I wasn't supposed to be involved today. According to the rules, the legitimate daughter of a general has no right to attend court. Yet early this morning, I was dragged here by Old Man Su, who is my nominal father in this world, General Su Xiao, the guardian of the realm, with a grave expression on his face.
Hanyan, in court today, that Shen boy is going to present a memorial.
A memorial about what? Old Man Su's face turned as dark as the bottom of a pot.
About you.
I was eating porridge at the time, and almost spat it out. About me. I was just a dutiful general's daughter who minded her own business, eating and drinking. Whom on earth did I offend? Only after being stuffed behind the screen in the side hall of the court did I see my fiancé with my own eyes. Shen Linyuan, the heir of Marquis Yuan, dressed in formal court attire, kneeling upright. He was weeping most sorrowfully.
Your Majesty.
His voice carried a carefully calculated sorrow as it echoed through the vast empty hall.
This subject's fiancé Su Hanyan is naturally jealous by nature and cannot tolerate others. I implore your Majesty to make a ruling for me to grant this subject permission to demote her to concubine and take the Prime Minister's legitimate daughter, Lu Wanning, as my primary wife.
The entire court gasped in unison. The candied fruit in my mouth almost fell to the floor. Wait, what kind of game are you playing? I spat the fruit pit into my sleeve and poked my head out to look toward the dragon throne. My brother, the reigning son of heaven, His Majesty Xiao Heng, sat upright upon the 9-dragon golden throne, draped in bright yellow dragon robes, wearing an imperial crown with 12 bead tassels. The hanging strands of beads swayed gently, casting shifting shadows across his face. He held half an orange between his fingertips, the very one I forced into his hands this morning. Carrying a food box, I slipped into the hall of mental cultivation through the imperial kitchen's back door, rambling as I handed him the orange. Brother, today's oranges are really sweet. Remember to eat it. Without looking up, holding his vermilion brush to review memorials, he had said,
Don't call me brother. Call me your Majesty.
Bro.
Your Majesty. Go away.
Laughing, I had shoved the orange into his hand and slipped away. Now, seated high upon the throne, he leisurely placed half an orange into his mouth, chewed it a couple of times, and swallowed it. Shen Linyuan knelt below the imperial dais, his forehead almost touching the floor tiles, his shoulders still trembling slightly, most likely gearing up to squeeze out another round of tears. The hall was so quiet one could hear heartbeats. Not a single official in court dared utter a word. Prime Minister Liu Zhengyan kept his head slightly bowed, a faint smile seeming to play at the corners of his mouth. Standing at the head of the civil officials, he was every bit the old sly fox, yet putting on an air of grave concern for the nation. My father, Su Xiao, stood on the military officer's side, one hand already resting on the hilt of the sword at his waist, veins bulging all the way from his temple down to his jaw. Hiding behind the screen, I desperately shot him meaningful looks. Dad, keep your cool. Don't do anything rash. He didn't see me at all. Or maybe he did, and just ignored me. Shen Linyuan spoke up again, his voice even louder, as if afraid the back row wouldn't hear.
This subject is by no means unfaithful. It is simply that Lady Su is willful and perverse and lacking feminine virtue. This subject truly cannot spend the rest of his life with her.
The candied fruit in my hand instantly shattered. And lacking feminine virtue. Who are you calling lacking in womanly virtue? I stay in the general's manor, doing nothing each day but eating and sleeping, only occasionally sneaking snacks from the imperial kitchen, not even bothering to step over your threshold. How am I lacking in virtue? Just as I was about to charge out, the guard behind my father placed a hand on my shoulder. Father turned his head slightly and shot me a cold glance. The meaning was crystal clear. Don't move, leave it to His Majesty. I took a deep breath and forced myself to hold back. Very well, let's see how my brother handles this. On the dragon throne sat Xiao Heng, my actual brother, the very guy who fought me over the last piece of braised pork in our past life and shoved me off the sofa just to steal the TV remote. He set the remaining half of the orange onto the dragon desk. His motion was exceedingly slow. As the orange met the gilded lacquer desk, it made only the faintest sound. At that exact moment, I saw Shen Linyuan's shoulders stiffen abruptly, and not just him. Every official in the court straightened their back. Xiao Heng picked up a silk handkerchief, leisurely wiping his fingers, one by one. Thumb, index finger. Finally finished, he folded the handkerchief and set it aside. Then, he spoke. His voice was very soft, devoid of any emotion, just like when he usually asks me in the Hall of Mental Cultivation what we are having to eat today. With just a single word, Shen Linyuan bent even lower. Xiao Heng slowly raised his eyes, the beaded strings of his imperial crown swaying gently before him, veiling half of his face, revealing only a faint curve at the corner of his lips.
Say that again.
He leaned forward slightly.
Who is to be made a concubine?
Those few words dropped upon the brick floor, sounding as if a heavy mallet had struck a stone chime. Silence enveloped the hall. Shen Linyuan's Adam's apple bobbed up and down. He parted his lips, unable to squeeze out even half a word. Beside him, the Marquis of Enyuan, his father, felt his knees give way, falling to his knees with a thud.
Your Majesty, my humble son is young and ignorant and has offended your Majesty.
We are asking him.
Xiao Heng's gaze never once left Shen Linyuan.
The heir of Marquis Enyuan. We bid you to say it again.
Hiding behind the screen, I watched cold sweat soak Shen Linyuan's collar. The hall seemed to turn instantly freezing, though it was midsummer. Several civil officials were trembling uncontrollably. Shen Linyuan's lips quivered endlessly, and only after a long pause did he manage to stammer.
Your Majesty, this subject was merely...
Only what?
Xiao Heng leaned back against the dragon throne, propping his chin on one hand. I was all too familiar with this posture. In our past life, when he curled up on the sofa, watching someone mess up in a video game, he had this exact look on his face. Loose, casual, yet his eyes were chillingly cold.
Merely finding the marriage we bestowed isn't good enough? Or do you think the general's legitimate daughter is beneath your marquisate?
Every word was spoken softly and slowly, like a cat playing with a mouse. Shen Linyuan knocked his forehead against the tiled floor with a thud.
This subject would not dare. This subject never meant that.
Then what exactly did you mean?
This subject...
You just said that Su Hanyan is naturally jealous.
This subject...
Intolerant.
This subject...
And lacking feminine virtue. After 3 questions, Shen Linyuan's face turned pale as paper. Xiao Heng suddenly asked,
Has she married you yet?
Shen Linyuan froze for a moment.
Not yet.
She hasn't even entered your door, and you already despise her.
Xiao Heng picked up that orange again, spinning it nonchalantly.
Do you consider our imperial decree invalid?
This subject is terrified.
Good that you know fear.
Xiao Heng broke off the last orange slice and popped it into his mouth.
Issue an edict.
Head eunuch Li immediately bowed.
This servant is here!
Shen Linyuan, the heir of Marquis Enyuan,
Insulted the descendant of a noble lady before the court, with arrogance and insolence.
He paused briefly.
He is stripped of his title as heir.
The imperial hall erupted in an uproar. Shen Linyuan shuddered all over and jerked his head up, his eyes wide open. Marquis Enyuan crawled forward on his knees, his voice trembling.
Your Majesty.
I stood stunned behind the screen. Then, the corners of my mouth slowly curled up. As for my brother, is truly my brother. Classic hymn. In our past life, you made someone transfer schools over a pack of spicy strips. And in this life, you can strip someone of their heirship over a single orange. I knew transmigrating with you wouldn't be a loss. Speaking of this transmigration thing, it really is quite absurd. 3 months ago, I was fighting over the remote with my brother in our rented apartment. He wanted to watch historical documentaries, and I wanted to watch variety shows. As a college student who just finished finals, I just wanted to watch something mindless. Was that too much to ask?
You watch those shows every day. What is the point?
Taking advantage of his height, he held the remote high above his head, deliberately playing dirty. And what is the point of you binge watching documentaries every day? Didn't you still fail the civil service exam? His face froze. I took the chance to jump up and grab the remote. He dodged to the side, and I instantly lost my balance. He quickly reached out to catch me, but missed. Both of us tumbled down, our heads smacking right into the TV stand. Then, the world started spinning. A second before losing consciousness, I heard him curse. I won't repeat the exact words. Either way, it wasn't very polite. When I opened my eyes again, I was lying on a soft bed embroidered with phoenixes. The bed curtains were all pink, covered with a silk quilt, and a scented sachet was tucked under the pillow. A maid in a blue and white floral jacket was crouching by the bed, using a cold, damp handkerchief to wipe my forehead.
Young lady is awake. Quick, summon the master. Quick, summon the mistress.
At the time, my head was still buzzing. My first thought was, is this a period drama shoot? My second thought was, this bed is really soft. My third thought was, where is my brother? I struggled to sit up, grabbed the maid's wrist, and asked, Sue, wait, no. Where is my brother? Where did he go? The maid was terribly frightened.
My lady, what are you talking about? You don't have a brother.
Later, it took me 3 whole days to figure out the situation. I had transmigrated to an era called the Great Sheng Dynasty. Now, I was the eldest legitimate daughter of General Su Xiao, the guardian of the realm, Su Hanyan. I was only 16 this year, and already betrothed. My fiancé was Shen Linyuan, the heir to the Marquis of Enyuan. But my brother had actually become the emperor. He was reigning over the Great Sheng Dynasty. The late emperor had passed away, and the crown prince ascended the throne. My brother had entered the crown prince's body. The new emperor, Xiao Heng, was merely 19 years old. How did I recognize him? On the day of the grand coronation ceremony, as the new emperor walked past the ranks of paying homage officials, his gaze slowly swept across the families of the military officers. When his eyes landed on me, he paused for a moment. Then he spoke. His voice was very faint, just loud enough for me to hear clearly.
Su Hanyan, the $30 you owe me, have you still not paid it back?
Every hair on my body stood on end instantly. This matter, only one person in the entire world knew. As for my brother, 3 days after the coronation ceremony, I secretly entered the imperial palace. To be precise, I walked right up to the palace gates and directly stated I wanted to see the emperor. The guards looked at me as if I were a lunatic, yet I confidently held up the command token of General Su's manner. The guards exchanged glances, and a young eunuch hurried inside to report. In less than the time it takes to burn an incense stick, head eunuch Li came out in person to escort me inside. In the hall of mental cultivation, Xiao Heng was seated behind the dragon desk, with memorials piled high like a small mountain before him. The palace maids and eunuchs in attendance were kneeling all over the floor. The moment I stepped inside, everyone's eyes fell upon me.
Withdraw,
Xiao Heng ordered. The maids and eunuchs filed out one after another. As soon as the palace doors closed, his solemn expression collapsed completely.
Su Hanyan.
He slammed the desk and stood up.
Do you know I've been here for 3 days? 3 whole days, without a single familiar face. The memorials are all in traditional characters, and it takes me ages to decipher them. The officials speak only in archaic gibberish. I can't hold up much longer either.
Yet looking at his face, though his features had changed, that irritable look on his face hasn't changed a bit. My nose suddenly stung with tears. Bro. He froze for a moment.
Who did you become?
He looked me up and down.
A general's daughter. The legitimate daughter?
Indeed.
Are you betrothed?
Yes, the heir of Marquis Enyuan. He knitted his brows.
Marquis of Enyuan. Which one is that?
You're asking me. Who should I ask? You're the emperor, and you don't even know. He rolled his eyes and rummaged through the pile of memorials for a while. He pulled out a registry, like booklet, and looked through it.
Marquis of Enyuan?
He read from the booklet.
Shen family. Heir apparent Shen Linyuan. 18 years old. Skilled in both literary and martial arts. Seems decent enough.
Call off this engagement.
Why call it off?
Do you really think I can marry an ancient person? He thought for a moment.
Makes sense.
He closed the register.
But we can't cancel it right now. I just ascended the throne, and the court is not yet stable. General Su holds military power. He was the crown prince's, the original owner of this body's greatest backer. Meddling with his daughter's engagement now would definitely cause chaos in court.
I raised an eyebrow at him. Since when did you understand all this? He rolled his eyes at me.
I've watched history documentaries for over a decade, you know. Did I watch them all for nothing?
Documentaries that still didn't help you pass the civil service exam.
Cut it out.
From that day on, my brother and I had an unspoken understanding. In this world, we had to pretend not to know each other. He played the emperor, and I played a general's daughter. In private, we ate and hung out as usual, and he dealt with all the trouble for me. 3 months passed in the blink of an eye. Life at the general's estate was quite comfortable. Dad Su was a typical military general, tall and robust, usually a man of few words. Yet every time he returned from a campaign, he brought me local specialties. Lady Su was gentle and considerate. My only headache was her constant nagging to learn needlework. Every few days, my brother would find an excuse to summon me to the palace.
General Su's legitimate daughter pays respects at the palace. Su Hanyan serves tea to the Empress Dowager.
Su Hanyan enters the palace. I'm seriously running out of excuses.
He once told me in private, then just say you miss me.
Do you want the entire court to think we have an improper relationship with an official's daughter?
What nonsense. You're my brother.
But they don't know that.
In the end, we had to compromise. The Empress Dowager needs a study companion. The Empress Dowager was a kind elderly lady who spent her days praying and fasting and was exceptionally warm toward me. So, under the pretext of being her study companion, I entered the palace every few days. In truth, I was mooching imperial meals off my brother in the Hall of Mental Cultivation. The imperial kitchen's osmanthus cakes were especially delicious. Life continued peacefully like this until that fool Shen Linyuan knelt in the golden throne room and asked in front of the entire court to demote me to a concubine, even claiming I lacked womanly virtues. I had never so much as touched his hand. Looking at the present situation, inside the golden throne room, the Marquis of Enyuan and his son knelt on the floor, each looking more pathetic than the other.
Your Majesty, have mercy.
The Marquis of Enyuan's voice cracked. Xiao Heng ignored him.
Eunuch Li.
This servant is here.
Draft an edict. Since the heir of Enyuan feels General Su's daughter is beneath him, we shall grant his wish.
He then stood up, the hem of his dragon robe brushing against the floor tiles, making a faint sound.
The engagement is hereby annulled.
An uproar swept through the hall. Shen Linyuan looked up sharply, his expression turning complicated, filled with fear and bewilderment. Yet, with a fleeting trace of secret joy, I saw it clearly. He was actually secretly thrilled for a moment. He thought he had gotten his way this time. He thought that with the emperor dissolving the betrothal, he could marry Liu Wanning with all due propriety. Xiao Heng also seemed to notice that fleeting look on his face. The corners of my brother's mouth curled up slightly. I knew that smile all too well. In our past life, when playing games, whenever the enemy handed him a free win, he smiled just like that.
Also,
Xiao Heng added,
Shen Linyuan has committed a breach of court etiquette and shown contempt for imperial grace. He is stripped of his title as heir. Effective today, he shall reflect on his actions behind closed doors for 3 months. As for the new heir to the Marquisate of Enyuan,
He paused slightly, looking past Shen Linyuan toward the 13 or 14-year-old youth in the corner of the hall.
Shen Lin, the second son of the Marquis of Enyuan, is honest and upright of character. He shall immediately be established as the heir.
Shen Lin'an, Shen Linyuan's younger brother, a boy whom almost no one usually paid attention to, was stunned on the spot by this sudden imperial decree. Shen Linyuan was stunned as well. His lips trembled slightly, and upon his pale face, what little secret joy remained vanished without a trace in an instant, leaving only genuine, palpable terror. At this moment he finally understood that not only did he fail to get his way, he had lost his title of heir apparent along with it. Talk about going for wool and coming home shorn. He had lost the whole sheep and more. Hiding behind the screen, I silently gave him a thumbs up. Bro, you really outdid yourself. After the imperial court was dismissed, I slipped away to the hall of mental cultivation. Xiao Heng had already changed into casual clothes, slouching on the couch and sipping tea. When I pushed the door open and walked in, he didn't even lift an eyelid.
Shut the door.
I closed the door behind me and dropped into the chair across from him. We stared at each other for 3 seconds, then spoke at the same time. What on earth is that guy Shen trying to pull? I slammed the table.
I want to know too.
Xiao Heng slammed the table as well. How dare he accuse me of being unchaste before the entire civil and military court? I don't even know where the front gate of his house is.
Ever since I transmigrated here, I found him an eyesore. That fellow walks with his chin held so high, as if everyone owes him money.
Most importantly, he actually seemed quite pleased. Did you see that? When you mentioned breaking off the engagement, the corner of his mouth curved up.
Of course I saw it, so I revoked his heir apparent title while I was at it,
Xiao Heng blew on his tea
and gave it to his younger brother. His brother is much more pleasing to the eye.
I took a breath and leaned back against the chair. Why do you think he pulled a stunt like this out of nowhere?
What else could it be for? That Liu girl, of course.
Xiao Heng set down his teacup, pulled a memorial from beneath the imperial desk, and handed it to me. I took it and opened it. The pages densely covered in writing. What is this?
Records from the Ministry of Rights. A month ago, Prime Minister Liu Zhengyan attempted to propose a marriage alliance to the Marquis of Enyuan's estate. Marquis Enyuan did not agree, but Shen Linyuan has already met Liu Wanning 4 times in private.
How did you know?
We are the Emperor. I sent people to investigate.
When did you start investigating?
Last time you came to the palace, you said Shen Linyuan sent you a box of moldy pastries. I sent someone to look into it right then.
I thought back for a moment. Last month, I indeed complained to him that Shen Linyuan had sent a box of pastries, and when I opened it, it was covered in green mold. I merely thought the cook had made a mistake and paid it no mind. So you've had your eye on him since then?
What else?
He picked up half an orange again.
He dared to send moldy food to my sister. If I didn't keep an eye on him, was I supposed to wait until New Year's?
My nose stung with tears again. I quickly turned my face away.
Drop the act.
He saw right through me.
Let's talk business. The engagement is officially broken off. What are your plans for the future?
What other plans should I make?
Do you really intend to sponge off the general's manor your entire life?
What is wrong with that? You are the emperor. Living off you is only natural. He glared at me.
Su Hanyan, living off your parents in our past life was one thing, and you want to continue in this life.
You are my brother. This isn't living off parents. It is called leaning on my brother. He took a deep breath, looking like he was fighting the urge to throw an orange at me.
Listen to me. The imperial court is far from stable. Liu Zhengyan, I've looked into him. He has plotted in court for over a decade, with protégés and allies across all 6 ministries. Back during the late emperor's reign, his influence was already hard to keep in check.
What does that have to do with me?
Liu Wanning didn't choose Shen Linyuan just for his handsome face. The Marquis of Enyuan commands 30,000 elite troops. Add General Su's 50,000, and over half of Desheng's military power rests in these 2 families. If Liu Zhengyan wins both over,
He stopped there. I understood. So stripping Shen Linyuan of his heirship today wasn't just to vent your anger for me.
Venting anger for you was one part of it.
He ate the last orange segment.
Also, I've kept an eye on Shen Li'an. He is honest and dutiful and never associates with the Liu family. Giving him the title of heir is equivalent to taking away a chess piece from Liu Zhengyan's hand.
I stared at him. Did you really only watch documentaries for over a decade?
I also attended civil service prep classes for 6 months.
Then how come you never passed?
If you bring that up again, I will send you as an envoy to the Tuju.
I shut my mouth. Right at that moment, Eunuch Li's voice echoed from outside the hall.
Your Majesty, Prime Minister Liu Zhengyan requests an audience.
Xiao Heng and I paused at the same time. He shot me a quick glance, and I understood. With a quick dart, I hid behind the screen behind the imperial desk. My movements were swift and clean, without even the hem of my robe showing. Xiao Heng adjusted his robes again, regaining his profound imperial demeanor. The palace doors opened, and a middle-aged man in purple robes walked in slowly. Liu Zhengyan. I peeked through the slit in the screen. He was in his early 50s, with a lean face and a meticulously trimmed beard. His pace was unhurried, his back held perfectly straight. One could tell at a glance that he was a shrewd schemer.
This subject greets your majesty.
You may rise, Prime Minister.
Xiao Heng resumed his courtly detachment.
What brings you here?
Liu Zhengyan slowly stood up, a well-measured look of concern on his face.
Your majesty, regarding what happened in the court today, this subject ventures to offer a few words.
Speak.
Regarding the heir of the Marquis of Enyuan. Though the punishment adhered to proper rules, I fear there may still be murmurs in the court. Heir Shen, after all, merely acted out of a momentary lapse in judgment.
A momentary lapse in judgment?
Xiao Heng picked up his teacup and took a slow sip.
Does the Prime Minister feel that we have punished him too harshly?
Liu Zhengyan lowered his head slightly.
This subject would not dare.
Only what?
It is only that this subject worries. Outsiders might perceive your majesty as overly favoring General Su's estate. Your majesty has only recently ascended the throne, a time when you should bestow broad benevolence. If, over a trivial personal affair between youths, it harms the bond of sovereign and subject between your majesty and the Marquis of Enyuan.
Prime Minister.
Xiao Heng interrupted.
We recall. The Prime Minister's legitimate daughter, Shen Linyuan, spoke of. Is your daughter? Is she not?
Liu Zhengyan's expression froze for a moment, just for a brief moment.
Indeed, this subject has failed to discipline her properly and has troubled your majesty with concern.
Regarding your daughter meeting Shen Linyuan in private, were you aware of it, Prime Minister?
The hall fell silent at once. Behind the screen, I held my breath. Liu Zhengyan's back stiffened almost imperceptibly.
What does your majesty mean by that?
Nothing in particular.
Xiao Heng smiled faintly.
Just asking casually. You may take your leave, Prime Minister.
He picked up his teacup again, the intention to dismiss him already made clear. Liu Zhengyan stood where he was, his lips moving slightly, before he finally bowed low in salute.
This subject takes his leave.
He turned to depart. As he reached the palace doors, his footsteps paused briefly, his back stiffening. The moment the door closed, I slipped out from behind the screen. Xiao Heng was still looking at the hall doors, his fingers tapping idly against the imperial desk. He is rattled. You did that on purpose. Have you always been this crafty since you were a kid? He turned back to look at me with an exceptionally innocent expression.
No, I don't. I merely told the truth.
I rolled my eyes at him. Enough. I should get going. Father Su is still waiting for me outside the palace gates.
Wait.
He took out a food container from under the imperial desk and pushed it before me.
The imperial kitchen just made fresh osmanthus cakes today. Take them.
My eyes lit up, and I grabbed the food box and ran. Reaching the doorway, I stopped again and looked back at him. He had already lowered his head to review memorials. Bro, thanks. His brush paused for a moment.
Go on, get out.
I slipped away with a grin. News of the broken engagement spread like wildfire. In less than a day, it had spread across the entire capital. The rumors were all over the place.
Have you heard? The heir to Marquis Enyuan was stripped of his title in court. Why was that? I heard he crossed General Su's household.
I heard someone say he wanted to take another concubine and offended the Su family lady.
It wasn't just taking a concubine. He wanted to demote the Su family lady to a concubine.
What nerve! Knowing General Su's temper, he still dared.
What good did daring do? His Majesty stripped him of his heir apparent title on the spot.
I sat on the swing in the backyard of the general's estate, swinging gently while eating osmanthus cake, listening to my maid, Kuiju, vividly recounting the rumors outside.
My lady, everyone outside says you're the Emperor's favorite.
Kuiju crouched beside me, her eyes sparkling bright.
Some even say His Majesty is fond of you, which is why.
Stop right there. I almost choked on the osmanthus cake. Who started that rumor? Go out right now and clear up that nonsense.
But miss, His Majesty truly treats you.
That is because I hastily caught myself. That is because His Majesty is wise. Keeping my expression unchanged, I said. What does that have to do with me? Kwiju left, looking doubtful. I took a sip of tea to wash down the osmanthus cake. If rumors really spread that my brother has feelings for me, just imagining the fallout gave me a headache. As I was pondering this, Father Su strode over from the front courtyard. Though dressed in casual clothes today, his commanding presence was not diminished in the slightest. Standing nearly 6'3", he had an imposing burly build. Standing right there, he looked like an iron tower.
Hanyan, the engagement is broken. How are you feeling about it?
I looked at him. A man like Father Su, despite his tall, rugged appearance, was actually very observant and thoughtful. He didn't ask whether I was heartbroken, nor did he offer empty platitudes like,
Father will stand up for you.
He simply asked how I felt. I don't feel much of anything. I answered honestly. It is called off, and that is that. Besides, I never wanted to marry him in the first place. Father Su stayed quiet for a long while.
That day, in the main hall, His Majesty's reaction.
He carefully weighed his words.
His Majesty seemed to care an awful lot about this matter.
My heart skipped a beat. Father Su stared intently at me, determined to get a clear answer.
Hanyan, Father must ask you, between you and His Majesty.
I jumped up abruptly. Don't get the wrong idea. There is absolutely nothing between His Majesty and me. He just felt Shen Linyuan went too far, and was merely backing up your daughter. Father Su studied my face closely for a long time. He let out a soft sigh.
Very well. Father believes you. From now on, take Kwiju along whenever you enter the palace. Don't go wandering off on your own again.
Understood. Father Su turned and walked toward the front courtyard. After a few steps, he turned back again.
Also, that box of moldy pastries the Shen boy sent you, I had someone send it back in its original state. I also added a fresh box of
He paused for a moment.
horse manure.
I was stunned. Father.
Packed in a fine brocade box and even tied with a satin ribbon.
Having said that, he strode away, leaving me standing alone, bewildered in the wind. General Su Xiao, what a man. No wonder my brother said. Working with Father Su went so smoothly. One of them was meticulous, the other straightforward. They really hit it off together. At the same time, at the Marquis and Yuan manor, ever since returning from the palace, Shen Linyuan had locked himself in his room, refusing to see anyone. The Marquis and Yuan pounded on the door for a long time.
You unfilial son, come out here right now.
No one answered.
Do you have any idea how much trouble you caused today? Your title of heir is gone, and it was given to your brother. Your brother.
Still, no one answered. Fuming with rage, the Marquis and Yuan pushed the door open. The room was in total disarray. Tea sets were shattered all over the floor, and 2 chairs were overturned on the side. Shen Linyuan sat by the window, his expression dark and grim.
Tell me the truth.
The Marquis and Yuan suppressed his anger.
That Lu girl, did you pick her yourself?
Shen Linyuan's lips moved slightly.
Father, Prime Minister, Liu promised me.
Promised you what?
Marquis and Yuan slammed his hand heavily against the doorframe.
Promised you a meteoric rise if you married his daughter. What were you thinking? You already have a marriage contract with General Su's manor, and you were the heir bestowed by the Emperor himself. What more did you want?
Shen Linyuan hung his head, his fists clenched tightly.
Su Hanyan is merely a military commander's daughter. Lu Wanning possesses both beauty and talent, and is the Prime Minister's legitimate daughter.
Enough.
Marquis and Yuan raised his voice. Shen Linyuan's expression froze slightly, and he slowly shifted his gaze aside. Marquis and Yuan pointed a finger at him, his finger trembling with rage.
Su Xiao is the great general guardian of the realm. How dare you look down on him? The Emperor has just stripped you of your title of heir. Yet, you still show no remorse.
Shen Linyuan pressed his lips together tightly, his face growing even darker. He did not talk back, yet not a trace of repentance showed in his eyes. Only gloom and defiance. Prime Minister Liu's manor. The inner courtyard. Liu Wanning's boudoir. Liu Zhengyan sat in a chair, rolling 2 walnuts in his hand, his expression cold and solemn. Liu Wanning knelt before him. She was 17, with an oval face, willow leaf brows, and almond eyes. A white jade hairpin adorned her hair, giving her an air of delicate, ethereal beauty. At this moment, her head was bowed, her shoulders trembling slightly, and her eyes reddened with tears.
Father, your daughter knows her mistake.
Where did you go wrong?
Liu Zhengyan's voice was not loud, yet it allowed no one to relax.
Your secret meeting with Shen Linyuan has already been discovered by the Emperor's people. Do you know that in court today, the Emperor questioned me? He asked me if I knew about this.
Liu Wanning's shoulders trembled even harder.
Daughter thought everything would go smoothly.
Smoothly?
Liu Zhengyan let out a cold sneer.
You thought having Shen Linyuan petition the emperor would make his majesty agree. You thought that once the Su family's engagement was broken, you could marry into the Marquis and Yuan manor.
He stood up, looking down at his daughter from above.
Warning, how did I teach you?
Think carefully before you act.
What do you call what you did today?
Liu Wanning bit her lower lip and remained silent. Liu Zhengyan sighed softly.
Enough. It has come to this. Saying more is useless.
He walked to the window, quietly gazing at the bright moon outside.
Without his title as heir apparent, Shen Linyuan is of no use now. This chess piece is already ruined.
Father.
However, there is still a turn of events. The emperor was truly furious today. He seemed to be defending the Su family. Yet, I sense something is amiss.
What is wrong?
The emperor's attitude towards Su Hanyan.
Liu Zhengyan narrowed his eyes.
If she were merely an official's daughter, it shouldn't have angered the Son of Heaven so deeply.
He paused.
Unless between the emperor and Su Hanyan, there is another relationship.
Liu Wanning looked up, a sudden spark lighting in her eyes.
Father, do you mean?
Investigate first.
Liu Zhengyan turned around.
Find out what the relationship really is between the emperor and Su Hanyan, if we can truly get some leverage on them.
He didn't finish his sentence, yet the calculation in his eyes could no longer be hidden. I was completely unaware of all this. I was still sitting on the backyard swing, eating my fourth osmanthus cake and scheming over another major endeavor, opening a milk tea shop. That is right. I was originally from modern times, though I was just an ordinary college student in my past life. I happened to know how to make milk tea. During college, I worked part-time at a milk tea shop for half a year. This era has tea leaves, milk and brown sugar. In theory, I can totally make milk tea. I immediately sat up straight, and my eyes grew brighter and brighter. Seeing my expression, Kuiju inexplicably shivered.
My lady, what is wrong with you?
Kuiju,
This servant is here.
buy me 3 caddies of tea leaves, 5 caddies of milk, and 10 caddies of brown sugar.
My lady, what do you need all these for?
To make money. Kuiju left, thoroughly confused. I sat on the swing, swinging my legs, already calculating the costs in my head. I can't rely on my brother for the rest of my life. What if I suddenly time travel back one day? And what if I can never go back? Either way, having money of my own always feels more reassuring. What is more, I looked down at the clothes I was wearing. The general's estate certainly used fine fabrics, but the style was far too outdated. Once I had money, the first thing I'd do was buy myself a few beautiful outfits. After that, I stopped the swing. I had to show Shen Linyuan what true regret feels like. Breaking the engagement? Very well. Sooner or later, you'll realize just who it was you tossed aside. Developing milk tea was harder than I thought. The difficulty wasn't in the technique, but in the raw ingredients. The tea varieties here were different from modern ones, much more astringent, and the sweet aftertaste was slow to surface. The milk was pure enough, yet there was no condensed milk, nor any light cream to be found. Huddled in the small kitchen in the back courtyard, I busied myself for 3 whole days. Kuiju tended the stove for me, while Madame Su walked past 3 times, each time wearing an expression that screamed, "Has my daughter lost her mind?" What I made on the first day looked like dishwater. Kuiju took a sip and scrunched her face up like a walnut. The second day was a bit better, yet far too sweet. On the third day, I lifted the bowl and took a sip. First came the aroma of tea, followed by a rich surge of milkiness, and finally a gentle finish of brown sugar sweetness, smooth on the palate, with a lingering aftertaste. Look, it worked this time. Here, taste it. Kuiju took the bowl and cautiously took a tiny sip. Her eyes flew wide in an instant. Then she took a big gulp, followed by another huge swallow. I snatched the bowl away. Stop drinking. This is a sample.
My lady, what on earth is this? It is way too delicious.
Milk tea. Just milk plus tea. Kuiju's eyes lit up like lanterns.
My lady, if we sell this, we'll definitely make a fortune.
Of course. I put down the bowl and wiped my hands clean. But I'm the legitimate daughter of the general's manor. It is improper for me to do business in person. I must find someone trustworthy to run the shop. And I also need some starting capital. The next day, I entered the palace again. In the hall of mental cultivation, Xiao Heng was discussing matters with the Minister of War. I waited in the side hall for an hour. My legs went numb. Finally, he was free. Bro, lend me some money. He picked up his teacup and paused upon hearing that.
How many?
500 taels. He set down the teacup.
For what?
To open a milk tea shop.
What?
Milk tea. It is just milk plus tea.
I know what milk tea is.
He interrupted me.
You want to open a milk tea shop in ancient times?
Yes, the recipe is ready, and it tastes great. He looked at me for a full 5 seconds.
I'll give you 1,000 taels.
To my surprise, he not only agreed, but doubled the amount. Really?
Don't use the Su family's name. Find someone reliable and run it discreetly necessary as an undercover shop.
He took out a banknote from the drawer and pushed it over.
Also, I want 30%.
The Grand Emperor actually wants to split profits with me.
Emperors can be broke too. Do you know how much silver it costs to renovate a palace? The imperial treasury is short on funds, and we don't have much private savings either.
Looking at his serious expression, I suddenly felt how utterly bizarre the scene before me was. The Emperor of the Great Sheng Dynasty was actually partnering up with his transmigrated sister to sell milk tea. Deal. I slapped the table. 70-30. 70% for me. 30 for you.
60-40.
70-30.
6.
Bro, no more oranges for you then.
70-30 it is.
The shop was located in an alley near a tea house in the Eastern Market. I asked a retired old steward from the Su Manor to help manage it, claiming to the public that it was his own little business. Kuiju was responsible for training the 3 shop assistants. On the opening day, I hid behind the curtain of a second-floor private room to peek. The very first customer was a scholar. He sat down and browsed the menu, which was written by me and engraved onto bamboo slips. There were 3 flavors available: original brown sugar and sweet osmanthus.
What is this milk tea?
The assistant explained just as I had taught him. Half skeptical, the scholar ordered a bowl of the original flavor, taking just 1 sip. His expression mirrored Kuishu's from back then. Then, he ordered a bowl of brown sugar flavor, followed by another of sweet osmanthus flavor. In the end, he even went back and brought 3 of his friends over. 3 days later, long lines formed outside the shop. 7 days after opening, the liveliest spot in the Eastern Market was no longer the century-old tea house next door, but the Cold Mist tea house tucked away in the corner of the alley. Kuiju came up with the name, and I couldn't stop her in time. Half a month later, looking at the figures in the ledger, I was grinning from ear to ear. Kuiju, guess how much we made?
100 taels?
800 taels.
Ah.
800 taels in just half a month, deducting the costs. A net profit of 600 taels. Kuiju's mouth formed a wide O. In my delight, I gave Kuiju a bonus of 3 taels, bought fine liquor worth 20 taels for Father Su, and bought 15 taels worth of new fabrics for Madame Su. As for my brother's 30% share, 240 taels. Xiao Heng took the banknote I handed over, a rare hint of satisfaction showing on his face. I teased, "What does your majesty think?"
I think you should have transmigrated here sooner.
Didn't you used to resent me for freeloading off our parents?
I don't mind it anymore.
He put away the banknote.
Keep it up.
However, the good times didn't last long. A month after the milk tea shop became a hit, trouble came knocking. People started copying us. 7 or 8 milk tea shops popped up in the East Market in no time. Although their taste was far inferior to mine, their prices were lower, which still siphoned off a portion of customers. What was even more outrageous, one of them actually put up a sign claiming to be an authentic branch of Hanyan Tea House. I never opened any branches. Where on earth did it come from? Kuiju stomped her feet in anger.
My lady, they have gone too far. How could they bully us like this?
Yet I remained very calm. Kuiju, have you ever heard of a brand moat?
What?
Whatever. You wouldn't understand. I closed the ledger, stood up, and paused. Help me develop new products.
A new item.
They can copy milk tea, but they can't keep up with my new releases. I walked into the small kitchen and tied on an apron. Iced milk tea. No, that won't work. There are no refrigerators in this era, but there are ice cellars. There is an ice cellar in the Imperial Palace. I gave a slight chuckle. Kuiju, send a visiting card to the palace for me. 3 days later, Hanyan Tea House launched an exclusive limited item. Iced osmanthus milk tea. The ice was sourced from the Imperial Ice Cellar and publicly named High Mountain Ice Drink. The price doubled, yet the line grew even longer. Those imitators looked at the new product and could only exchange helpless glances. Where on earth could they get ice from the Imperial Ice Cellar? This was the power of having strong backing. My brother was right. The greatest advantage of time travel isn't a cheat code. It is the information gap. As for the milk tea shop, I set it aside for the moment. The real trouble arose at a palace banquet. It was the Empress Dowager's birthday, and all the dignitaries in the capital were present. As the legitimate daughter of General Su's manor, I naturally had to attend. I wore a moon-white trailing gown chosen personally by Lady Su, and on my head, a pearl and jade hairpin that Father Su had brought back from the western regions. Kuiju followed behind, holding up the hem of my dress. I walked carefully into the Hall of Supreme Harmony. The hall was brightly lit with lanterns. The music of flutes and strings drifted softly, and the air was filled with agarwood incense, mingled with the sweet aroma of osmanthus wine. I scanned the seating arrangements and found the name placard with my name in the back row. Just as I sat down, from the corner of my eye, I caught sight of two familiar figures, Shen Linyuan and Liu Wanning. Shen Linyuan sat behind the Marquis of Enyuan, with his head lowered, looking utterly despondent. Now that he was no longer the heir, his seat had been moved from the front to the middle back rows. Liu Wanning sat beside the Prime Minister's wife, wearing an aqua silk dress, a gold-inlaid jade butterfly hairpin gracing her hair. She sat with perfect posture, her gaze composed and steady, as if sensing my gaze upon her. She looked up at me. Our eyes met, and she gave me a faint smile, dignified and gentle, like a spring breeze. Had I not known what she did behind the scenes, I might truly have taken her for a kind and gentle young lady. Unfortunately for her, I knew everything. I returned a smile of my own, then looked down to nibble on the candied fruit hidden in my sleeve. The birthday banquet officially commenced. The Empress Dowager sat at the head of the hall, beaming at the assembled guests. Xiao Heng sat to the Empress Dowager's right, clad in his imperial yellow dragon robe, his face entirely expressionless. I could tell he was suppressing his sheer boredom. After several congratulatory songs and dances concluded, the Empress Dowager finally spoke.
It is so lively today. We hear the young ladies present are all gifted and beautiful. Why not seize this chance for each to show her talents and broaden our horizons?
The hall fell silent for a moment, followed immediately by a burst of applause. Liu Wanning was the first to rise.
Your Imperial Majesty, Wanning's learning is modest, yet I wish to present a short poem to celebrate your Majesty's birthday.
The Empress Dowager nodded with a smile. Liu Wanning stepped into the center of the hall, slightly bowing her head, as if gathering her thoughts. After a brief moment, she looked up and began to recite, her voice clear and resonant, rising and falling with graceful cadence. She had composed a 7-character regulated verse, with elegant diction and strict antithesis. The final line ended on,
May the sun and moon shine together for 10,000 years.
The entire hall erupted in praise. The Empress Dowager clapped and laughed.
A fine poem indeed. A fine poem indeed, truly worthy of Chancellor Liu's daughter. Scholarly elegance truly shines through.
Liu Wanning curtsied gently, a smile playing on her lips. Then, she cast a glance in my direction. There was something hidden in that look. Not defiance, yet far more uncomfortable than defiance. It was pity. Daughters of military generals likely knew little of composing poetry after all. That look, I knew it all too well. In my past life, before final exams, it was the exact look straight as students gave to the slackers. The Empress Dowager scanned the hall, and finally let her gaze rest on me.
Lady Su, our Empress Dowager has looked forward to seeing you for quite some time. Why don't you compose one as well? What do you say?
In an instant, all eyes turned to me. I saw old Dad Su sit up straight among the military officials, his face completely fraught with tension. Shen Linyuan looked up as well, a trace of schadenfreude lingering on his lips. Liu Wanning lowered her eyes, that hint of pity around her lips becoming even more pronounced. Looking back at my brother, his fingers were hidden beneath the imperial desk, lightly tapping twice. I looked up and locked eyes with him. He subtly raised an eyebrow. I understood what he meant. Can you manage it? I stood up firmly. Your Imperial Majesty, Hanyan's learning is meager. I dare not make a fool of myself before the other ladies.
There is no need to be modest.
The Empress Dowager smiled and said,
Recite whatever you like. I am not particular.
I nodded in compliance, walked slowly to the center of the hall, and quietly took a deep breath. Li Bai, forgive me. Su Shi, forgive me too. Since the Tang and Song dynasties never existed in this world, your poetry belongs to me for now. Eastward flows the mighty river, its waves washing away the gallant figures of the ages. West of the ancient ramparts, people say, stands red cliff of Zhouyu from the Three Kingdoms. Jagged rocks pierce the sky, crashing waves batter the shore, churning up 1,000 heaps of snow. The realm is like a magnificent painting. How many heroes were there at that time? My voice echoed through the hall. It was as if someone had pressed the mute button on the entire hall, plunging it into absolute silence. Xiao Qiao had just married him, his valiant posture radiant with vigor, holding a feather fan and wearing a silk turban. Amid laughter and talk, the enemy's mighty fleet turned to ashes. My soul wanders through the ancient realm. Laugh at my sentimentality, for gray hairs have sprouted so early. Human life is but a fleeting dream. Let me pour a goblet of wine to the river moon. As my final words resonated and faded, the hall fell so quiet that only the crackling of the candle flames could be heard. Immediately after, someone dropped their wine cup to the floor. The Empress Dowager's mouth fell open, unable to close for quite a while. The smile on Liu Wanning's face froze completely. Shen Linyuan's eyes went wide, as if he had just seen a ghost. Father Su had risen halfway to his feet, only to quietly sit back down, his chest heaving violently. As for my brother, he leaned back against the dragon throne. The corners of his lips slowly curled up into a smile. Then, he gently clapped his hands 3 times.
Splendid poem.
Those 2 words broke the silence like opening a floodgate.
Splendid. A truly magnificent poem. Brilliant. Unrivaled. I have never seen the like before.
Thunderous applause filled the hall. The Empress Dowager was so thrilled, her hands turned red from clapping.
Very well, very well. Lady Su, this poem of yours is worth more than all the birthday poems tonight combined. Simona, come here. Reward her. Bestow upon her the grandest reward.
I bowed slightly and returned to my seat. As I walked past Li Wanning, I saw her face had turned nearly translucent with rage. She kept her head down, clenching her hands tightly, her knuckles turning white. Beside her, the Prime Minister's wife wore an equally sour expression. In my heart, I felt a slight sense of, just a tiny bit of, satisfaction. The moment I returned to my seat, Kuiju was so moved, she nearly burst into tears.
My lady, such an incredible poem. When did you write it?
I just came up with it.
On the spot.
Kuiju looked at me, as if looking upon a deity descended to earth. Feeling guilty, I looked away. Su Shi, I am sorry. I will borrow your words again next time. The birthday banquet carried on. After 3 rounds of wine, the Empress Dowager grew weary and retired with the support of her palace maids. Xiao Heng stood up right after, also preparing to leave. Just at that moment, a voice suddenly rang out.
Your Majesty.
Liu Zhengyan stepped forward.
This subject has a matter to report to your Majesty on this auspicious occasion.
Xiao Heng's brow knitted slightly.
Speak, Prime Minister.
Liu Zhengyan smiled faintly.
Northern Yan recently dispatched a diplomatic delegation, which will arrive in the capital in half a month. Among those traveling with them is Mirongji, the 3rd prince of Northern Yan.
An uproar swept through the hall. Northern Yan was a formidable neighbor to the north of Desheng, and the two nations had cycled between war and peace for decades, barely maintaining peace at present.
The Northern Yan delegation has another purpose for this visit.
Liu Zhengyan said unhurriedly.
To seek a marriage alliance for 3rd Prince Mirongji.
The hall fell utterly silent.
A marriage alliance.
Xiao Heng frowned even more deeply.
Whose hand are they seeking?
Liu Zhengyan lowered his head slightly.
A noble lady of Dasheng. The Northern Yan credentials specify one with both talent and beauty.
He raised his eyes and shot a seemingly casual glance in my direction.
As for the specific choice, it naturally rests with your Majesty to decide.
The candied fruit dropped from my hand. Xiao Heng's expression instantly turned cold. I saw his fingers quietly clench the sleeves of his dragon robe. He did not respond immediately, and only spoke faintly after a while.
This matter will be discussed later.
Then he turned and walked away. Yet, I knew what was on his mind. For when I went to the Hall of Mental Cultivation to see him that night, the very first thing he said was,
Whoever dares to marry you off to Northern Yan, we shall annihilate Northern Yan.
Bro, calm down first.
We are very calm.
He slammed the teacup heavily onto the table. Tea spilled all over the tabletop.
That old bastard Liu Zhengyan is testing us. He wants to figure out just how much we care about you and use that against us.
Sitting across from him, I nodded while munching on an osmanthus cake. So what do you plan to do?
Nothing for now. We'll wait until the Northern Yan envoy arrives.
He rubbed his temples.
Also, your milk tea shop has been drawing too much attention lately. The shadow guards reported that someone is already looking into the owner behind it.
Did they find anything?
Not yet. Just be more careful.
I nodded, then handed him a bowl of iced osmanthus milk tea. He took it and had a sip. His expression softened a bit.
What flavor is this?
A new item, with honey added.
It is all right.
Can't you just say it is delicious?
No. Lest you get too cocky.
I rolled my eyes at him, my heart completely at ease. With my brother around, the sky wouldn't fall. On the day the Northern Yan envoy arrived in the capital, a gentle drizzle was falling. Both sides of the capital's main thoroughfare were packed with commoners who had come to watch the spectacle. The Northern Yan envoy made quite an impressive entrance. Dozens of tall steeds trotted through the rain, their gray wolf banners fluttering in the wind. The standard bearers were clad in leather armor, steam rising from their bodies. At the very front, astride his horse, sat a young man. He looked about 20 years old, his long hair tied up high, with deep-set features and a straight, sharp nose. Even through the curtain of rain, his gray-blue eyes remained piercingly sharp. It was none other than the 3rd Prince of Northern Yan, Mirongji. From a private room on the 2nd floor of the tea house, I lifted the curtain to look at him. Kuiju leaned beside me, her eyes completely transfixed.
My lady, this 3rd prince is truly handsome.
Wipe your drool.
This servant isn't drooling.
It is practically dripping from your chin. Kuiju hastily raised her hand to wipe her mouth. I let down the curtain and leaned back against the chair. Mirongji. Yesterday, my brother showed me the intelligence on Mirongji. He was the most favored prince of the Emperor of Northern Yan, skilled in both literary and martial arts, and reportedly the strongest contender for the Northern Yan throne. His arrival in Dasheng was ostensibly to propose a marriage alliance, but in truth, mostly to test our strength. Liu Zhengyan's deliberate mention of this at the birthday banquet had an easy easy to guess motive. If the emperor refused to let me marry into the alliance, it would prove that he indeed favored me exceptionally. That would give Liu Zhengyan leverage. If the emperor agreed to the marriage alliance, I would be the unfortunate one. Yet my brother could never possibly agree. So what Liu Zhengyan was gambling on was my brother's reaction. He didn't genuinely want to marry me off, but rather wanted, before all the officials, to confirm the fact that the emperor favored the Su family. That old fox. At the welcome banquet, I finally saw Mirongji in person. Up close, he was even more handsome and even more dangerous. He walked like a hunting leopard, looking at people as if sizing up prey. After taking his seat, he surveyed the entire hall, and his gaze ultimately settled on me. I could feel the weight of that stare. He looked at me for 3 seconds, then withdrew his gaze, the corners of his mouth curling up faintly. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. The entire banquet proceeded orderly, with no incidents occurring. Yet, after the banquet dispersed, as I was walking through the corridor, someone suddenly called out to me from behind.
Miss Su.
I turned around. Mirongji stood merely 3 paces away. The moonlight after the rain washed over him, making those gray-blue eyes gleam like translucent jewels. Third prince. I curtsied in greeting. He offered a faint smile. It seemed gentle enough, yet I felt it never truly reached his eyes.
That poem from the banquet, was it truly composed by Lady Su?
Yes.
Eastward flows the mighty river, its waves washing away the gallant figures of the ages. What magnificent spirit.
He took a step forward.
I have traveled to many places and met many talented women, yet someone like you, Lady Su,
He tilted his head slightly,
whose poetry carries an air of lethal intent, is truly the first.
Coming from his lips, those words held an unmistakable touch of playful intrigue. My heart skipped a beat. Your third highness flatters me.
It is not flattery.
He took another step closer, then, lowering his voice.
It is the truth, Miss Su. There is something I'm very curious about.
What is it?
Between you and the Emperor of Dasheng, what is your relationship with him, really?
The heir froze. His Majesty is the sovereign, and I am merely a subject's daughter. What else could we be?
Is that so?
He pulled back to create some distance again.
That is well, because the one this prince wishes to take as wife
He fixed his gaze squarely upon me.
is precisely you, Lady Su.
I froze on the spot. What? He flashed me a smile, turned, and walked away. His footsteps faded along the corridor. I stood alone under the moonlight, my mind going completely blank. My first thought was, I'm done for. My brother is going to kill someone. Sure enough, that very night, in the Hall of Mental Cultivation,
What did you say?
Xiao Heng slammed his hand on the desk. The teacup jumped from the shock, crashing to the floor and shattering into pieces. Uniquely scrambled behind a pillar in terror. He said he wants to marry me. I repeated, trying to stay as calm as possible.
Bullshit.
Bro, mind your status.
We say he is talking bullshit.
He paced around the hall 6 full times.
Who does that brat Mirongji think he is? A mere prince of Northern Yan, coming into our territory and daring to eye our sis.
He abruptly cut himself off.
Daring to set his sights on our subject's daughter. Who the hell does he think he is?
Bro, calm down first.
We are not angry. We are perfectly calm.
He was not calm at all. I let out a sigh. Listen to me first. Mirongji targeting me is most likely orchestrated by Liu Zhengyan. He must have sent word before the Northern Yan envoy arrived, hyping me up as Great Sheng's most talented lady. In the end, he just wants to push me into the eye of the storm. Xiao Heng stopped in his tracks.
You mean?
Liu Zhengyan is setting a trap. If you refuse Mirongji's proposal, it confirms you are playing favorites with me. But if you agree,
we will never agree to this.
I knew. But you have to find a tactful way to decline. We cannot give Liu Zhengyan any leverage, nor can we openly rupture ties with Northern Yan. Xiao Heng fell silent. He sat back down on the dragon throne, his fingers rhythmically tapping the armrest. I stood aside, waiting patiently for quite a while. Finally, he spoke.
I actually have an idea.
What?
Let Su Xiao refuse in person.
I raised an eyebrow. Refuse how?
You are General Su's daughter. The general's estate has its rules. A daughter's marriage requires her father's consent, as long as Su Xiao does not consent.
But old dad Su has no idea about our relationship. If you issue an edict for me to marry for peace, as a subject, how would he dare defy an imperial decree?
Who said we would issue an edict?
He looked at me.
We only need to leave the decision entirely to Su Xiao, and then leave it to you to persuade him.
After a moment's thought, on old dad Su's side, it shouldn't be much of a problem. He certainly wouldn't want to marry me off far away to Northern Yan.
Then it is settled. At tomorrow's morning court, we will entrust this matter to Su Xiao. Return to the estate first and give him a heads up.
I nodded. There is one more thing.
What?
Mirongji said the poem I wrote carries a murderous aura. What do you think? Xiao Heng paused in silence for a second.
The original author is Su Shi. If people find out you're just reciting poems,
There is no sushi in this world.
Are you sure?
Of course. I specifically asked the female official beside the Empress Dowager, and also checked the catalog of the Imperial Library. Tang poetry and song lyrics simply do not exist here.
That is fine then.
He rubbed his temples.
Recite fewer poems in the future. If you do it too often, what if another transmigrator recognizes them?
You think there are other transmigrators?
Just to be safe.
True. I stood up to leave. Reaching the door, I turned back, bro. This Mirong-ji is definitely not simple. When he asked about my relationship with you, his gaze was exceptionally intense. He is already suspicious. Xiao Heng's fingers suddenly froze.
We understand.
His voice deepened.
Visit the palace less often these days. Do not let him find any clues.
I nodded. And then, wait. I took a food box out from my sleeve. Iced honey milk tea. A new item. Try it.
Get lost.
I slipped away with a grin. At the morning court the next day, Mirong-ji presented a state letter in the hall, formally proposing a marriage alliance with Desheng. The letter was written very politely, filled with diplomatic pleasantries about eternal friendship between the two nations. In plain terms, it meant, give us your lady, and we'll be brothers from now on. Xiao Heng placed the letter on the imperial desk and glanced over it.
The third prince has traveled from afar, which pleases us greatly. However, this matter is of great consequence and requires careful consideration.
Standing among the envoys, Mirong-ji cupped his hands and said,
Thank you, your majesty. This prince awaits your good news.
With that, his gaze drifted toward me once again. This time, he did not conceal it at all. The entire court of civil and military officials saw it. Whispers and discussions broke out everywhere. Liu Zhengyan stepped forward at the opportune moment.
Your Majesty, Northern Yan proposing a marriage alliance is a major affair between two nations and must not be treated lightly. This subject believes we should select a suitable candidate as soon as possible to show Desheng's sincerity.
Xiao Heng did not express his stance.
Whom does the Prime Minister think would be suitable?
Liu Zhengyan replied with a smile.
Each household may decide for themselves. This subject believes that all unmarried daughters of officials of eligible age in the capital can be included in the candidate list.
His formal words sounded pleasant, but everyone knew who he was referring to. Right now, the most famous unmarried noblewoman in the capital was Su Hanyan, which was me. Xiao Heng was silent for a moment.
If that is the case, this matter shall be discussed between the Ministry of Rights and each household. Any lady listed as a candidate must agree alongside her father. We will never force anyone.
The smile on Liu Zhengyan's face stiffened for a moment. Both the lady herself and her father had to agree. This was Xiao Heng's master move. He handed the power of decision to old man Su and me. As long as we shook our heads, no one could do anything. If Liu Zhengyan insisted on pushing me into a political marriage, he would have to openly fall out with General Su's manor. That was a veteran general commanding 50,000 elite troops. Would he dare? After the court adjourned, I stayed at the general's manor, waiting for old man Su. As soon as he entered the manor, before even taking off his armor, he strode right up to me.
Hanyan. About Northern Yan, I've heard.
Old man Su went silent for a moment and then smashed his fist into the stone table beside him. The stone table cracked on the spot.
Whoever dares marry my daughter off to Northern Yan, I'll fight them to the death. That stone table was brand new. Then we'll buy another one.
He crouched down, his fierce eyes fixed intently on me.
Hanyan. Listen to your father. I don't care if he is a prince of Northern Yan or an immortal from the heavens. As long as you're unwilling, no one will touch a single hair on your head. I am here, and the Su army is here. What do you have to fear?
A wave of warmth rushed to my eyes. My father in this lifetime, though not related to me by blood, was closer to me than my own kin. Father, I'm not afraid. He stood up.
Very well. I will reply to the Ministry of Rights right now. A daughter of the Su family will never enter a diplomatic marriage.
After taking 2 steps, he turned back.
By the way, that milk tea shop of yours.
My heart tightened.
Don't think you can hide it from me. How much did you make?
600 taels.
Give your old man 10%.
Deal. He walked away, satisfied. On the other side, the Liu family was not idle either. Liu Zhengyan didn't target me directly. He wasn't that foolish. Instead, he stirred up talk in the imperial court.
General Su commanded a formidable army. His daughter enjoyed the emperor's deep favor, and now she could even refuse a peace marriage. Had the power of the Su family grown a bit too excessive?
This narrative soon spread quietly through the court. These words were not spoken by Liu Zhengyan himself. It was his disciples, old associates, and connections who brought it up casually on various occasions. Xiao Heng naturally took notice, yet his response defied everyone's expectations. 3 days later, at the morning court session,
where is the Minister of Rights?
This subject is here.
Issue an edict. Since the third prince of Northern Yan is sincere, we shall arrange a competition. Eligible young ladies from the capital's noble households may enter voluntarily. They shall compete in scholarship, martial skills, and the arts. The final victor shall receive a marriage granted by our own decree.
The imperial court immediately erupted into an uproar. Liu Zhengyan froze on the spot. This turn of events was entirely beyond his expectations. Once it became a public contest, it would no longer be a matter of the emperor favoring the Su family, but rather genuine ability deciding the outcome. If Su Hanyan won, it would be entirely justified. Yet, if Su Hanyan were to lose, she wouldn't have to marry him. After all, the competition was voluntary. She could simply choose not to sign up at all. Liu Zhengyan's expression shifted repeatedly. Only then did he realize that he had been completely outmaneuvered. By using this competition, the emperor had completely shed any accusation of favoring the Su family. However, he still had another move to play. After the court adjourned, Liu Zhengyan went to see Shen Linyuan in the evening. In a side courtyard of the Marquis Enyuan's manor, Shen Linyuan leaned back in his chair, drinking his sorrows away alone. It had been over a month since his heir apparent title was stripped. He had fallen into a deep state of despondency, stubble showing on his chin and dark circles beneath his eyes.
Young Master Shen.
Liu Zhengyan walked up to him. Shen Linyuan lifted his bleary eyes.
Prime Minister Liu.
Do you want revenge?
Shen Linyuan's pupils shrank suddenly.
What do you mean by that?
The emperor stripped you of your title as heir apparent and handed it over to your brother, Su Hanyan. No, it is the Su family is the root of all this. Don't you hate them?
Shen Linyuan gripped his wine cup tightly.
What do you want me to do?
Liu Zhengyan revealed a faint smile.
When the competition comes, I need you to do something for me.
He leaned down and whispered a few words into Shen Linyuan's ear. Shen Linyuan's expression shifted gradually, first despondent, then somber, and finally contorted. In the end, he actually smiled.
Very well.
I had no idea what they were scheming, but I knew a storm was brewing, because Kuiju brought me some news.
My lady, someone has their eyes on our milk tea shop. Who? We don't know who. The head steward said, someone is offering a high price to bribe the workers, trying to find out who the owner behind the scenes is.
I set down the milk tea in my hand. Pass this news into the palace.
Yes.
Kuiju turned and hurried off. I sat back on the swing, swaying slowly back and forth. A breeze blew through the garden, carrying waves of sweet osmanthus fragrance. I slowly closed my eyes. Shen Linyuan, Liu Zhengyan, Liu Wanning. Investigate all you want. Even if you find out, so what? The reigning emperor is my own biological brother. Even if your investigation reaches the heavens, you still won't be able to turn the world upside down. The competition was set for 3 days later, located in the Royal Imperial Garden. All the young ladies from high-ranking families in the capital could register voluntarily. Liu Wanning was the first to sign up. That was no surprise. What truly surprised me was that she did not do it to marry into Northern Yan. She only wanted to win the competition. How did I know? The day before the competition, Mirongji approached me once again. This time, it was outside the Empress Dowager's Buddhist hall. I had just delivered a new flavor of milk tea to the Empress Dowager. Her ladyship had already become a loyal customer. As soon as I walked out, I saw Mirongji leaning against a pillar in the corridor, waiting for me.
Miss Su.
Third prince.
I heard you didn't sign up for the competition.
I'm not interested. He tilted his head slightly.
This prince isn't interested either.
What do you mean by that? He took 2 steps closer and lowered his voice.
Miss Su, this prince will tell you something. Prime Minister Liu sent someone to see me. He claimed that as long as I choose Miss Liu in the competition, he will give me something afterward.
What thing?
The defense maps of Great Sheng's northwestern border.
My blood instantly ran cold. The defense maps, those were classified military secrets. Liu Zhengyan was trading military secrets. Why are you telling me this? Mirongji looked at my reaction, and the corner of his mouth curved up slightly.
Because this prince has no interest in defense maps.
What exactly do you want? His grayish-blue eyes looked straight at me.
I am interested in you.
Ah.
Miss Su. This prince has always been a good judge of character. You are definitely no ordinary general's daughter. You carry an aura. How should I put it? An aura that doesn't belong to this era.
My heart leapt into my throat. You must be joking, third prince.
This prince never jokes. Let me remind you of one more thing. In tomorrow's competition, the Liu family has set a trap. Shen Linyuan will make a move. You must be careful.
He turned and walked away, leaving me standing alone where I was, my fingers trembling slightly. I'm not afraid of Shen Linyuan. What I fear is what Liu Zhengyan will trade. The defense maps. How dare he use something like that as leverage? I took a deep breath and headed straight for the Hall of Mental Cultivation. Half an hour later, in the Hall of Mental Cultivation, after hearing what I had to say, Xiao Heng's face turned livid. He didn't fly into a rage. Instead, he was unnaturally calm.
The defense maps.
He murmured in a low voice. Bro, Liu Zhengyan is committing treason.
I knew.
He picked up the vermilion brush and wrote a few words on a blank sheet of rice paper.
But I cannot move against him directly. There is no hard evidence. Mirongji's word alone cannot serve as proof. I need.
He paused his brush.
We must make Lu Zhengyan expose himself.
How?
Tomorrow's competition.
He looked up at me.
You will participate. Yes, Lu Zhengyan set a trap and instructed Shen Linyuan to make a move. Then let him make his move. I'd like to see what he is really up to.
A look appeared in his eyes that I rarely saw. Back in our past life, when he was studying for the civil service exam, he had a similar look. The look of someone who, after repeated failures, had finally found a breakthrough.
Go with peace of mind.
He put down the vermilion brush.
All the necessary preparations. We have already made them.
What preparations did you make? He suddenly smiled.
Do you know how many memorials we have reviewed over these past 3 months?
How many?
16,327.
And so?
It means that we have thoroughly investigated every single person in the imperial court.
He leaned back against the dragon throne.
Lu Zhengyan thinks his decades of influence are unbreakable. Yet the longer one schemes, the more dirt one leaves behind.
He raised his hand and tapped on the hidden compartment beneath the dragon desk.
Everything is inside.
I looked at him. I suddenly felt it only made sense that my brother could pass the civil service exam. If he didn't, it would truly be the world's loss. On the day of the competition, the imperial garden was festooned with lanterns and banners. The spectator area was packed with people, high-ranking officials, foreign envoys, and eunuchs and palace maids gathered to watch. There were 12 contestants in total. Liu Wanning sat in the third seat, wearing an aqua silk dress, with a butterfly tassel hairpin in her hair, which was gleaming under the sunlight. She looked full of confidence. As for me, was contestant number 13.
Su Hanyan.
Just 15 minutes before registration closed, Eunuch Li had personally added my name. The crowd began to buzz with whispers. Liu Wanning turned her head to look at me, a hint of surprise flashing in her eyes. Then, she quickly regained her gentle smile. The exam consists of 3 rounds: literature, talent, and policy analysis. The literature test was straightforward. I recited poetry as usual. This time, I chose Li Bai. The waters of the Yellow River descend from the heavens. After all, Li Bai doesn't even exist in this world. Liu Wanning wasn't lacking either. Her poem was elegant and well-crafted, winning plenty of applause. The first round ended in a tie. Next was the talent round. Liu Wanning played a piece on the guqin. To be honest, she played exceptionally well. Her fingering smooth and fluid, the melody ethereal and graceful, drawing applause from the whole room. When my turn came, I walked to the center of the arena without bringing any musical instrument.
What will Miss Su be presenting?
The Vice Minister of Rights asked. I took a deep breath. Martial arts. I reached out my hand, and Father Su stood up from the audience, tossing his sword toward me. A flash of silver sliced through the air, and I caught it firmly. I unsheathed the long sword. During these 3 months in the Su family, old Dad Su had forced me to practice swordplay every day. In my previous life, I was on the university martial arts team. Although modern martial arts differ from ancient swordsmanship, this body still retains muscle memory. Coupled with my foundation, 3 months was enough to master a decent sword routine. The sword flashed like white silk, its silver gleams weaving in the sunlight, an impenetrable net. With the final move, the tip of my sword pointed straight ahead, freezing in place. A hush fell over the surroundings, followed by thunderous applause. In the audience, Old Man Su clapped his hands red, grinning from ear to ear. In the envoy seats, Mirongji's gray-blue eyes suddenly lit up, while Liu Wanning's face turned pale. The third round was the policy essay. The topic was the foundation of a nation, civilian rule or military might. Liu Wanning answered first. She cited extensively from various sources, presenting a well-reasoned argument, advocating governing the state through civil virtues and winning people over with virtue. It was a great answer, as standard as a textbook. When my turn came, I stood up firmly, glanced around at everyone, and said, without culture, no nation endures. Without might, no nation stands. I didn't cite ancient classics. I spoke in plain, simple terms. A country cannot go far without culture, but without military strength, it cannot even stand its ground. If you want neighboring states to reason with you, first, let them know that your fists are harder. If you want your people to live in peace, first make the enemies at the border dare not cross the line. Thus, culture and might are not a choice of one over the other. They are like a person's left and right hands. Losing either hand leaves one crippled. I paused. However, my gaze shifted toward Lu Zhengyan. If someone preaches governance through culture, yet secretly leaks our state military secrets to outsiders, the entire audience fell silent. Such a person is unworthy of speaking of culture, unworthy of debating might, and deserves only to face their crimes. The air froze. Lu Zhengyan's face changed instantly. He jumped up abruptly and parted his lips to speak. Just then, Xiao Heng's voice came from the viewing platform.
Well said.
He stood up, his imperial dragon robes rustling in the wind.
We also believe It is indeed time to judge crimes.
He clapped 3 times. Orderly footsteps echoed from all directions of the imperial garden. Imperial guards in golden armor, armed with spears, surrounded the imperial garden completely. Liu Zhengyan's face turned ashen in an instant.
Your Majesty.
Prime Minister Liu Zhengyan.
Xiao Heng walked slowly down the steps of the viewing platform.
We have investigated for 3 months. Over 14 years of your schemes. You embezzled 1.2 million taels of tax silver, sold government posts and noble titles 73 times, and even colluded with Northern Yan.
He stopped before Liu Zhengyan.
Just this single offense is enough to execute 3 generations of your clan.
Liu Zhengyan's legs gave way.
Your Majesty. This is a frame-up.
A frame-up.
Xiao Heng waved his hand, and Eunuch Li stepped forward carrying a tray. On the tray lay a stack of letters.
These are your handwritten letters exchanged with Northern Yan spies. They bear your handwriting and your personal seal.
Liu Zhengyan reached toward the stack of letters, his fingers trembling violently. He opened the first letter, the color draining from his face bit by bit.
Impossible. These letters were clearly already.
He abruptly shut his mouth, but it was already too late.
Already burned. What you burned were copies. The originals were hidden in your study's secret compartment, and our men retrieved them last month.
Liu Zhengyan trembled all over, his knees giving way as he collapsed heavily to his knees.
Your Majesty, this subject.
His lips trembled uncontrollably, and his expression twisted in horror. The mask of dignity and composure he wore for 14 years finally shattered completely at this moment.
Father.
Liu Wanning rushed out from the contestants' seats and threw herself down beside Liu Zhengyan. She looked up at Xiao Heng, tears streaming down her face.
Your Majesty, there must be some mistake. My father could never.
Liu Wanning.
Xiao Heng finally turned his gaze toward her.
You conspired with Shen Linyuan, instigating him to publicly humiliate our subject's daughter in the Jinluan Hall. Did you truly think we were completely unaware?
Liu Wanning's face turned deathly pale in an instant.
I didn't.
Bring it up.
Eunuch Li presented yet another letter. It was written by Liu Wanning to Shen Linyuan. In the letter, how to petition to break off the engagement, and how to phrase things to ruin Su Hanyan's reputation were all clearly mapped out. Even, consumed by jealousy and lacking feminine virtue, were taught by her. Every word and sentence was clear as day. Liu Wanning stared at the letter. The blood first rushed to her face, and then rapidly drained away. Her face turned red and pale by turns. Her mouth hung open, unable to utter a single word. She finally collapsed onto the ground. Just then,
Your Majesty.
A voice suddenly rang out from the crowd. Shen Linyuan. No one knew where he had emerged from, with disheveled hair and bloodshot eyes.
Your Majesty, Liu Zhengyan forced me into this. Your servant was coerced by him.
Silence.
Xiao Heng didn't even spare him a glance.
Shen Linyuan, for humiliating a minister's daughter before the court and having unseemly conduct, shall be stripped of all scholarly honors and demoted to a commoner. The Marquis of Enyuan's noble rank is reduced by 1 tier as a reprimand.
No.
Shen Linyuan swayed unsteadily.
Your Majesty, I have nothing left.
He collapsed to his knees, trembling all over. Then, he turned his head to look at me. Regret finally surfaced in those bloodshot eyes. But it was already too late.
Su Hanyan.
His voice was hoarse.
You, how could you?
How could I what? I stood where I was, looking down at him. Shen Linyuan, things reaching this point today. You chose every single step with your own hands. No one ever forced you.
I didn't.
You chose to despise me, chose to believe Liu Wanning, and chose to slander me in the imperial court for being unchaste. I crouched down, meeting his gaze at eye level. So everything you have lost was also your own choice. His pupils trembled incessantly. The light in those eyes finally went out. He lowered his head, his shoulders twitching continuously. He made no sound. I stood up, turned around, and walked away. Behind me, the imperial guards escorted Liu Zhengyan, his daughter, and Shen Linyuan away. The wind blew across the imperial garden, scattering petals all over the ground. Arriving below the viewing platform, Xiao Heng was standing there with his hands behind his back. I walked to his side and stood shoulder to shoulder with him. Brother and sister exchanged glances, saying nothing. He took an orange from his sleeve, split it in 2, and handed half to me. I took it. It tasted very sweet. Liu Zhengyan's case was soon concluded. With irrefutable evidence of treason, he was sentenced to exile 3,000 miles away. Liu Wanning was exiled with her father, and their family property was confiscated. Shen Linyuan was demoted to a commoner. The Marquisate of Enyuan was demoted by 1 rank, and Shen Lin'an smoothly inherited the reduced title. He was a decent man. The first thing he did upon succeeding the title was to visit Old Man Su in person to apologize. Old Man Su sized him up for a long while, then sighed and waved his hand.
Enough. This matter has nothing to do with you. Go back and be a proper marquis.
Shen Lin'an thanked him repeatedly before turning to leave. As for Murong Ji, After the competition, he stayed in the capital for another half-month. Nothing more came of the marriage proposal. With Liu Zhangyan arrested, their so-called deal naturally vanished into thin air. Before departing, he came to see me one last time. It was still at the corridor outside the Empress Dowager's Buddhist hall.
Miss Su,
Third Prince.
I am returning to Northern Yan.
Take care on your journey. He smiled softly.
Will you really not reconsider? The grasslands of Northern Yan are truly magnificent.
No need. I can't stand the cold. He looked at me, and within his grayish-blue eyes, there was a hint of regret.
Then let me ask you one final question.
Go ahead.
What is your relation to Xiao Heng, really?
I met his gaze. What do you think? He fell silent for a moment.
You peel oranges the exact same way.
My heart skipped a beat.
Both of you pluck the stem from the bottom first, and then begin peeling from the side. I have never seen anyone peel them like that, yet the two of you do it identically.
His observation was so sharp that it made my scalp tingle. Coincidence, I said.
Is that so?
That is right. He stared at me for a full 3 seconds, then smiled.
Very well. Then it is a coincidence.
He turned around.
Miss So, until we meet again.
He left. For real this time. I leaned against the pillar and let out a long sigh of relief. Back at the Hall of Mental Cultivation, I relayed Murongji's words to Xiao Heng. His expression turned subtle.
An orange. Because of peeling an orange.
He stayed silent for 5 seconds, then pushed the oranges on the imperial desk aside.
Don't peel oranges in front of outsiders from now on.
You're not allowed to peel them either.
We are the Son of Heaven. We peel whenever we please.
Then don't blame me if someone sees through you. He glared at me, pulled the orange back again, peeled it open, and handed half to me. The two of us sat in the Hall of Mental Cultivation, each holding half an orange, neither saying a word. Sunlight streamed through the window, bathing everything in golden light. Bro, do you think we can ever go back? He paused mid-chew on his orange. He pondered for a moment.
I don't know.
Do you want to go back? He thought about it a bit longer.
Go back for what? Keep taking the civil service exam.
So you want to stay?
Staying here isn't bad either.
He tossed the orange peel into the wastebasket.
Being the emperor in this life is a bit exhausting, but at least you're here with me.
I looked at him. Are you complimenting me in a roundabout way?
You're overthinking it. We mean, someone can run errands and bring us oranges.
Su Yan, you really have a smart mouth.
Call me your majesty.
Bro.
Call me your majesty.
Bro. He popped another half of the orange into his mouth. I smiled. Days ahead are still long. With my brother in this world, I have nothing to fear. As for what happened later, Hanyan tea houses opened across every prefecture in Desheng. Later, Father Su was conferred the title of first-class Duke of Zhengguo. Later, Shen Linyuan, on the streets of the capital, made a living selling steamed cakes from a stall. Every time he passed Hanyan tea house, he would take a wide detour. Word has it that whenever he smelled milk tea, his stomach would ache. Later, Liu Wanning married a farmer in the place of her exile. Passing merchants said she gained 30 pounds. Later, Murongji became the emperor of Northern Yan. On the day of his coronation, he sent someone to deliver a basket of oranges to the Great Sheng Imperial Palace, along with a letter. Coincidence. After reading the letter, Xiao Heng's face remained dark the entire day. As for me, I sat on the swing in the backyard of the general's estate, sipping my homemade iced sweet osmanthus milk tea. Kuizhu was doing the accounts nearby. The sun was shining just right, and the swing swayed gently. I closed my eyes. In my past life, I asked my brother, what do you want to do in the future?
Be a civil servant. It is stable.
No ambition. Now that he is emperor, I suppose that is quite stable too. Only, I picked up an orange, peeled it from the side. Still, very sweet.